So, Wei, I do have a question for you as well. And again, anybody can answer. So, as an actor, you are very, very familiar with the hustle that it takes to stay booked and chase your goals. You talked about the fact that at some point in your life, you really just had to focus on work. I'm curious about what you think about the conflict between art as just you being an artist and creating out of just your pure intent to create and the institution of the art. So the institution of you being an actor and also kind of the institution we see in the film where these artists are applying for their grants and sorry, not grants, for foundation prizes. So can you talk a little bit about that?
I would definitely need help from the other two. One. I talked a little bit earlier about this. As I grow older, like my goal and my intention, my focus completely shift. And I graduated from drama school, so I was like, and went to grad school for acting. So my goals like have always been super clear, and I know like I came all the way from China to Hollywood. I know it was super clear to me that this is what I'm gonna do. Until I don't know, as I get older, you just you gotta have to live your life, and you gotta have to eat. You gotta have to pay your bills. You can't just. I mean, I can't really say you can't, but I have to find a balance of being, I don't know, true to myself, but also, live my life.
I mean, I'm kind of thinking about how, like right now we all, well, apart from you, Robin, obviously, but we all live in Los Angeles, so we have a perception of film and cinema in a very Hollywood context right now. I mean, obviously, there are people who make work in like a different field and all this other stuff. But what I mean is like we live in a city that sort of demands a little bit of that. And so I kind of imagine too that there is a different expectation that sometimes can be a bit challenging in that sense, compared to like if where you ended up choosing to live elsewhere. I mean, I can't speak for you like in terms of like your experiences, but like I think, for example, about Asian American cinema, just as an example, and how that's kind of developing these days, or what's being pushed forward or pushed back and all this other stuff. And I think about that especially in a Hollywood context compared to independent cinema or even like Asian cinema. I think is so different from Asian American cinema. So I'm kind of like thinking about what your thinking process was when you moved from China to the US, and if you kind of had those same thoughts as well. That, I mean, like, it's something I'm thinking about, but I don't know.
And even just thinking about the film as well, because we can definitely see that contrast and the conflict within the film with her just trying to be an artist and be her and be who she wants to be versus having to kind of please certain people, because there was a comment that was made by someone at a gallery just to Aino about maybe having to look out for her friend, because I don't want to get too deep into it, but even just the higher ups or the people who are judging their art, the people who are awarding or helping them get these prizes, having to kind of fit into a box to please these people versus just doing whatever she wants with her artistry. So we can kind of look at it in that sense as well, because I do want to see that comparison between life and the film as well.
I mean, I definitely feel that in terms of like the films that I make. Why aren't you making like something super topical, for example, or something that deals with like, I don't know, a certain topic that maybe I'm not that I'm not interested in, but it's not in like my immediate sort of sight. So like I don't know, Wei or Aria, like if you've been sort of pigeonholed into certain, how do you say this, like roles?
Types.
Yeah, you know, like
even that, yeah.
yeah.
Yes. I definitely have, but thankfully the things that I've been typecasted as I actually enjoy, like action, roles. So and I think there's a reason why that exists, and I understand the logic behind it because, as a casting director or anybody in mainstream media who's trying to sell a product, it's all at the end of the day a business, and you want to make sure that everything in the formula fits and that you can generate the money back to investors, all this stuff. Like, it's already set with previous examples of how to make the most money, right? No one cares about real art in so many ways in mainstream media. So in order to find the pieces of that puzzle, the fastest thing that you see is what you initially get as an impression from an actor, So it makes sense. It sucks because obviously it limits your choice of roles until you get to a certain point where you have the autonomy to choose. So I think in regards to your question about, the conflict between institution and artistry, this feels like the age-old conflict in terms of artists and their struggle to stay true to their art and keep their integrity in terms of what they want to put forth and what they want to represent and their form of expression versus how am I going to make a living to, sustain myself and my family. My dad is an oil painter and he has a certain way of his style, but I don't think that it fits with the majority of people who are buying art these days. And so he's struggling with how do I stay true to what I like to draw and what I want to express versus making money. And even like artists or actors in black box theaters, right? Like the best plays that I read are rarely seen produced on a big scale or even in movies. And I would love for those roles and stories to be told because I'm like, this is what true art is. Like, yeah, and I feel it in my soul and I want to express that. But the thing is, unfortunately, you have to sometimes, know your market and know your audience and try to bend things so that it fits those molds. And there are some sacrifices that have to be made, unless you just stick true to your art, but you run the risk of never really being seen. So
100%. Wow.
Yeah, art's hard. I mean,
it is. I'm trying not to give too much of my own personal opinion, but even just hearing you say that, I'm a painter and it's the same thing. You really just have to, okay, do I want to just paint what everybody else wants me to paint, or do I just want to paint for Robin? So
Right.
Again, like that is going to be the age-old story with artists who want to make money off their art.
Mhm.
Okay, so I do want to get into a little bit of the scientific side that we see in the movie. So Aino's artistic process seems very scientific and experimental. So playing with the chemistry of like the yuzu juice, perfume, almond oil / maybe cyanide. Let's talk about the additional pressure of pushing those boundaries when it comes to art and the pressures that it puts on the artist and the art itself. Anybody can answer.
Oh, okay. I mean, Annika Yi was actually the inspiration for Aino's work. That she does a lot with spells and everything. She's a South Korean artist, but I do think like Annika really does it very smartly. Like she is able to sort of bridge those sort of scientific things to something that is, about culture, about womanhood, about like other things. Whereas I think with Aino, when I wrote Aino's art, it was much more simplified for a different reason. But I also kind of think too that the way that I was kind of thinking about it was that science still for Aino was a bit more, yes, like theoretically, like everything is very detailed in that sense and like logical, but there is something very emotional that she's connected with. So that was sort of my intention with it. Yeah.
Yeah, because we definitely do see that being her focus, and she's taking her time, and it's very, very intricate and close for her.
Yeah. There are a couple other artists that I had sort of based her art from, like more conceptual stuff. But I think the main person off the top of my head was Anakiki. But yeah, like she had a little bit of like classical. In a way, she's a little bit old-fashioned in some ways. Like I know science is very forward-thinking in that sense, or like very, well, I think like tech stuff seems to be kind of trendy these days, but I was kind of thinking of like 1970s minimalism a little bit. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, Elenie and I never talked about that portion of it in the terms of how it affected the character, but personally, at least whenever I hear experimental, it means more freedom to
That is true.
kind of just play around in new territory, and that way, all limitations are off within the limits of the experiment, right? So if I'm gonna play with smells, then there's so much to play with in that, like the nuances. That's insane just to even think about it, but there's still boundaries, so it's not like completely just romping around in the void. But I like the fact that with experimenting you can trample into new territory and discover things, but you're right in the sense that it is a more laborious process. The results are uncertain, and if as an artist I'm trying to get a prize or receive achieve a certain result, then the pressure would be to have a certain result at a certain time period. But it's interesting because I do now that you mention it, see the introversion aspect of the scientific methodical approach that I took to art versus Yu Xing's more kind of external expression of the artistry. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, like with Aino, the main thing that I was actually thinking about was the fact that you can't really market her work in a visual way. Like this is just me kind of like thinking at the time when I was sort of like thinking about their artwork and everything. Whereas like Yu Xing stuff is very visual. You see it, you know what it is, and you can kind of sell it that way. Whereas like with Aino, it's like you can't really sell smell. And I was kind of thinking too that you can't really get the sense of smell through cinema. I think there are ways to visually kind of translate it, but unless, I don't know, 4D just like sprays stuff into the audience, like that's a different story.
We definitely gathered that smell was her medium because we see her smelling and we see the plants, we see the different mediums that she's mixing. So that definitely is gathered through that. And I guess that's why, again, for the viewer, it's just like, oh my gosh, that is a lot. She's going through a whole bunch of different things. Like, what is going to be this outcome? Whereas, again, it's more visual with Yu Xing's work. There's less, actually, no, there isn't less questions, because I definitely had questions of how that even came to be. Although I saw it, I'm like, but how? And again, for the viewers, you will have to wait to see what I mean. But yes, there definitely is that that differentiation. But I do like the fact that, Aria, you brought up that experimental does not necessarily mean pressure all the time, in this sense, because there is a scientific addition to that. Yes, that's what we gathered, but experimental is also freeing. So I do like that you touched on that, because it's definitely outside of any restrictions aside from what the artist puts on themselves. So definitely do really like that. Before we get going, I do want to pry into each of your lives a little bit and see what y'all got going on. So I do understand if y'all can't tell me certain things, but I promise I won't tell anybody except our viewers. That's it. So Wei, let's start with you. What's going on and what do you have planned right now?
As you can probably tell, that pandemic last year was dead for me. Not doing anything. and I haven't seen my parents, my family for almost 2 years now. So big thing for me right now is getting my mom over, and I can finally meet up with her and, getting our normal life back. And I got a puppy. That's my new thing. And auditioning and trying to find the balance. And hopefully I can go back to China soon too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That would be so good. Yes, hopefully when all the borders are open back up and things are good to go. Aria, since you're already unmuted, would you like to tell me what you got going on right now? Any upcoming projects?
Yeah, we shot a few, what is it called? Not spec, but concept trailers. So one for like this fantasy short. It's very intricate, and I'm really excited to see the final result because it was all green screen. So with special effects and everything, it's gonna be something completely different. And then another kind of drama action TV pilot, also a concept trailer for that. So if either of those, get pushed forward, that would be amazing, but I'm not holding my breath. And then there's this new platform. I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about it, but I'll just promote it because I think they want promotion anyways. It's called ursa.com. It's URSA. And it's just short stories that are primarily underrepresented groups, authors within those groups. And so it's a kind of audio / online platform for writers to share their content. And so that's launching soon. And then a lot of fitness work. So if you have a Nordic track machine, you can train with me on Nordic track. Yeah, they're
Nordic track.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is it like a Peloton thing? I'm like completely ignorant.
Yeah, well, Peloton, I think mostly they're known for their cycling, right? But Nordic track is old, like OG treadmill stuff. But now they've gone into cycles or bikes and the whole, mirror kind of experience as well. So
okay.
Yeah.
All right. And Elenie, what you got going on, girl?
Well, I'm shooting a short in Trinidad later this year. So going back to my home country, once borders reopen up, fingers crossed, everything, hoping for the best. Oh my God. Yeah, in the meantime, I've been editing something that I shot during COVID. It's much more experimental and less narrative driven than Citric Acid. But I'm having fun with it. It's just to kind of keep the blood going. And I've written a feature to set back at home in Trinidad too, but we'll see how that goes. Yeah, but those are sort of my three main things that I'm holding on to, I guess.
Definitely excited to see what you have planned. Trinidad is a beautiful country. I still haven't been able to go, but I've seen so much of it. So I'm hoping we'll get to see a lot of Trinidad in these.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, just in general, like I miss home so much. I miss my family and friends, and I'm like, why am I here? I'm kidding.
No. I feel you. Thank you, Elenie, Aria, and Wei for spending time with me today. And thank you for watching Julie Mango TV. Subscribe for more conversations with Caribbean filmmakers. I'm Robin Bourne, and I will see you next time.